And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome aboard. I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska marine weather on Saturday, September 6, 2025. Starting out with the sea ice, we're nearing the end of the at least the minimum ice extent here. Usually happens about the third week of September, just prior to the equinox. We still have a little ice left floating around Prudhoe Bay, Kaktovik out there in the Beaufort Sea, but otherwise we still got maybe a couple of more weeks before we start to see the minimum ice, and then by October the new ice begins to form for the next season. And looking at the satellite image on this Saturday mid-afternoon, low pressure out here between St. Paul and St. Matthew will come on shore along the lower Yukon coast, pulling northeastward up toward the northwest interior. Feed of moisture ahead of it, a couple different fronts pulling moisture up and through areas along Kodiak Island into south central, and then up into and along south of the Alaska Range. And then we also have more in the way of areas of rain and rain showers across the western and southwest interior that'll advance eastward into Sunday. Further south and west, next low pressure will be coming out of the North Pacific toward the Aleutians. But here's that low by Sunday afternoon. It'll be crossing up through the lower Yukon, eastern Norton Sound. A number of areas of rain and rain showers all throughout the western, central, southwest portion of the mainland, Alaska Peninsula. Initial lead front could have some showers with it, pulling through Prince William Sound, northern Gulf. Panhandle, the ridge of high pressure that's brought nearly 2 weeks of more or less dry, sunny weather in many cases. Temperatures, some 70s, even lower 80s. That's coming to an end. That ridge will break down Sunday into Monday. And here comes a low that'll deepen to near 980 millibars Monday afternoon as it crosses the central and eastern Aleutians, passing there and just south. Winds around this system will be gale force. There could even be some storm force gust associated along these fronts. That low is going to take a position heading east-northeast up into the western Gulf by midweek for Wednesday and Thursday, and that will serve to draw down a little colder, drier air along the west side of the state here later in the upcoming week and next weekend. So looking at the marine forecast Sunday, Lynn Canal, south winds 10 knots, waves a foot or two. West winds 10 knots there, Stevens Passage. Northwest 15 knots there, Ketchikan, Metlakatla, and also off of Craig. Waves 2-3 feet, Dixon Entrance, maybe as much as 4 or 5 feet outside of Craig and Port Alexander. And then heading up further north, variable winds outside of Yakutat Bay at just 5 knots, waves maybe a few feet. Monday, south winds, Stevens Passage, Lynn Canal, waves a foot or two. Northwest winds 10 knots here around Ketchikan, Metlakatla, with waves a couple of feet. For the outer coast, look for west-south winds turning southeasterly outside of Cross Sound and outside of Yakutat Bay at 15 knots, and waves out off the coastline there 5-6 feet. Now, within Prince William Sound, Sunday and outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, southeast winds to 20 knots, waves 4 to 5 feet. South winds to 20 knots there, not only lower Cook, but middle inlet around Anchor Point with waves 4 or 5 feet, and then southeast winds Turnagain Arm, upper Cook Inlet with waves 2 to 3 feet. For Monday, winds do come down a bit over the region. East winds 10 knots within Prince William Sound, waves a foot or two, variable to 10 to 15 knots outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance and along the Kenai coast, waves 3-4 feet, and then for Cook Inlet, southwest to south winds 10 to 15 knots and waves 2 to 3 feet. For Kodiak Island on Sunday, winds will be southerly 20 knots either side, Shelikof Strait, 5-6 foot waves. Winds southwest to west, trailing out along the Alaska Peninsula 20 to 25 knots with waves as high as 9 to 10 feet. They're either side Cold Bay and False Pass. For Monday, winds will be northwest to west across Kodiak Island, 3-foot wave Shelikof Strait. Look for those northwest winds 20 knots, upper Cook Inlet, Port Huyton, Chiknik, turning easterly and as that circulation from that stronger low works its way across the central eastern Aleutians, winds will pick up out of the east at Cold Bay and False Pass to 20 knots as the day goes on. Sunday, we'll see start out northwest to west winds 25 to 30 knots over the eastern Aleutians, becoming southeasterly west of Adak, but Monday you can clearly see the influence of that low pressure that's going to be the center passing along and just south of the central and eastern Aleutians. Look for east-northeast winds 25 to 30 knots across the eastern and central Aleutians, where waves will be in excess of 10 feet either side there, especially of Adak and Atka. And then along the southwest coast, for Sunday, south winds 20 knots into Bristol Bay, west winds into Kuskokwim Bay 25 knots. Along the lower Yukon coast, after that front pushes in, northwest winds 20 to 25 knots with 4 to 5 foot waves off of Hooper Bay and north of Mikorik. And then west-northwest winds to 30 knots, St. Matthew to St. Paul and St. George, waves 9 to 12 feet. Monday, winds will come down. Look for northerly winds 15 to 20 knots out of Bristol Bay and Kuskokwim Bays, turning northeasterly 20 knots, 3-4 foot waves around the Pribilofs. And then along the lower Yukon coast up into Norton Sound, northwest winds of 10 knots, waves a couple of feet. Finally, in the far north, for the areas south of the Bering Strait, west side of the Seward Peninsula, north side of St. Lawrence Island, north to northwest winds 20 to 25 knots, waves 4 to 5 feet. As we come up through the Chukchi Sea, generally north winds 15 to 20 knots with 3 to 4 foot waves, and then winds turn northeasterly at Utqiagvik with waves a couple of feet, and then offshore flow, Prudhoe Bay to Kaktovik, south-southeast winds at 10 knots, maybe waves a couple of feet. West wind 15 knots on Monday at Kaktovik with 2 to 3 foot waves, but those winds will be turning northerly behind that front. So north winds 15 knots, Prudhoe Bay through Utqiagvik, Wainwright, and then north winds 10 knots down through the lower Chukchi Sea, turning northwesterly through the Bering Strait at around 5 to 10 knots. Waves generally on Monday, lower Chukchi Sea and Bering Strait a couple of feet because there's not a really strong gradient there, but nevertheless, some cooler air will be sliding southward along the west coast as we get into the middle and latter half of the upcoming week.